Have you ever attended a family event only to realize you were never truly welcome? My sister's baby shower was a picture of perfection held at an upscale restaurant filled with laughter and luxury. But there was one clear detail: there was no seat for me. "Why don't you try that dirty pub across the street?" my sister sneered. "It suits you perfectly," my mother added with a smirk. I didn't argue. I simply smiled. "I'll do that." As I stepped into the pub, their faces went pale. They had no idea who I really was. Sometimes family can feel like the cruelest invitation, printed on high-quality paper. Her sister Iris's handwriting was flawless, as always, not a single imperfection, just like her life. Aurora, dressed in a soft gray silk dress, checked her reflection in the restaurant's glass doors. Her makeup was tasteful and understated, and a simple pearl necklace gleamed quietly at her neck, a gift to herself when she opened her first restaurant 10 years ago. Lame Zone, perched on the top floor of the Four Seasons Hotel in Boston, offered a luxurious space with a breathtaking view of the Beacon Hill cityscape. The atmosphere perfectly balanced old Boston tradition with modern sophistication. Aurora understood why this place was chosen. She had heard that her sister Iris's husband, Sterling Clark, entertained investment banking clients here regularly. "Do you have a reservation, ma'am?" The receptionist glanced at Aurora before she presented the invitation. "The Wilson Clark baby shower." The receptionist gave Aurora a quick, appraising look before checking the guest list. Aurora fully understood the meaning behind that glance. She was probably listed as the sister who works at a pub, a 10-year-old lie, or rather, a story her family had fabricated long ago. Dozens of guests had already gathered in the opulent venue. Under the soft glow of the chandelier, women in the latest designer dresses chatted elegantly, champagne glasses in hand. White linens covered the tables, adorned with delicate pastel blue flower arrangements. At the center of it all was Iris, 7 months pregnant, radiating elegance. She wore a high-end maternity dress, and a diamond necklace from her husband, Sterling, sparkled at her throat. Beside her stood their mother, Regina, perfect in her hair and makeup, draped in a luxury brand dress. They were surrounded by members of the Newton Country Club. Regina, a woman who had worked her way up from real estate to socialite status, had high expectations for her daughter's expectations that Iris had met, but Aurora had never quite lived up to. "Well, Aurora, you actually came." Her mother's voice held a hint of surprise, mingled with slight disappointment. That tone had echoed through Aurora's memories countless times. For the past decade, Aurora had only met with them once or twice a year at family events. It had become a mutual choice. Her mother and sister lived in an upscale suburban neighborhood, active in the nouveau riche social circles. Aurora, on the other hand, led a quiet life downtown at least. That's what her family believed. In truth, Aurora was the owner-chef of a high-end restaurant called the Hidden Gem, located in a renovated red brick building in the Beacon Hill district. Her restaurant was beloved by Harvard professors and old-money families alike, though she appeared in the media only under her pseudonym, Chef Liz, and stayed completely off social media. The restaurant's reputation had spread entirely through word of mouth and prestigious gourmet magazines, with a constant 3-month waiting list. But her family knew none of this. As Aurora scanned the room, she noticed the place cards arranged on the tables, but couldn't find her name anywhere. She caught sight of Iris's close friends glancing her way, whispering among themselves. They were all from the same private school as Iris and belonged to the same country club. "Is that the sister everyone talks about? She works at a pub, right?" They spoke loud enough for her to hear, and Aurora took a deep breath, her lips curving into a graceful smile. Within her, a quiet confidence had matured over the past 10 years, a confidence that no slanderous whisper could touch. Aurora walked slowly through the venue. The chandelier light cast dancing shadows at her feet. White tablecloths covered the tables with pastel blue centerpieces arranged elegantly. Many of the guests were familiar faces from Newton's social scene. As she passed by, conversations would pause momentarily, then transform into whispers. Those whispers floated through the venue like a breeze. Aurora continued searching for her name card. 10 round tables, each seating 12. Every place had a name card made of high-quality paper, but nowhere could she find the name Aurora Wilson. In one corner of the venue, hotel staff were arranging finger foods: smoked salmon canapés, caviar-topped blinis, truffle-flavored quiche. Aurora noticed slight imperfections in each presentation. A professional's eye never rests. Aurora, even though you came all this way. Iris approached. Her voice carried false familiarity. You seem to be having trouble finding your seat. Aurora simply smiled in response. Behind Iris stood her husband Sterling, sizing up Aurora with his investment banker's sharp gaze. We had a sudden increase in guests, you see. Iris put on an apologetic expression, but her eyes were smiling. We had to prioritize our important guests. Aurora understood the meaning perfectly. She wasn't an important guest. She could never be one. But don't worry. Iris's voice brightened as if she just had a brilliant idea. Why don't you try that dingy pub across the street? That might be more your style. Her words spread through the venue like champagne bubbles. Ripples of laughter spread from the surrounding guests. Yes, Regina approached with a smug smile. That would be perfect for you. Aurora took a slow, deep breath. 10 years seemed to pass in an instant, and she realized nothing had changed after all. I'll do that. She smiled gracefully. There was something mysterious in her expression. Enjoy your baby shower. Aurora left the venue with perfect posture and elegance. Her luxury brand heels clicked quietly against the marble floor. Behind her, her mother and sister laughed triumphantly as new gossip began circulating among the guests. In the hallway, Aurora paused by a window. The Boston cityscape glowed in the evening light. Among the buildings, she could see where her restaurant, the Hidden Gem, stood. Iris and her mother watched Aurora's silhouette through the window, backlit by the setting sun. She radiated an almost divine dignity, yet to her mother and sister, she appeared as nothing more than a pathetic loser. Aurora started walking toward the elevator. Her steps were a bit lighter than usual because she knew the time for the truth to be revealed was steadily approaching. After retrieving her jacket from the front desk, Aurora left the hotel and crossed the street. Her mother and sister watched with satisfied smiles. However, they didn't yet know that their satisfaction wouldn't last long. As Aurora walked toward the pub across the street, she took out her mobile phone. The screen displayed a message from Michelin inspectors announcing their upcoming visit to her restaurant. A graceful smile played across Aurora's lips. 1 week after the baby shower, Regina was reading the Boston Globe over breakfast as usual. There was a large headline, "The Hidden Gem, Boston's Culinary Treasure." Next to beautiful photographs of the food was the name Chef Liz. "Sterling, look at this article!" Iris peered over her husband's shoulder. "The Hidden Gem? Isn't that the impossible-to-book restaurant?" The article continued with a detailed introduction to the restaurant. It described how the renovated red brick building in Beacon Hill housed an exclusive space of just 20 seats, decorated with crystal chandeliers and antique furniture. "Even Harvard's president is a regular," Sterling remarked, impressed. "The executives at our bank have been trying to get reservations too, but there's usually a 3-month wait." Regina read the article carefully. Chef Liz had opened this restaurant 10 years ago, quietly but steadily building her reputation with innovative cuisine influenced by her training in France. She had earned 2 Michelin stars and was aiming even higher. "Should we try going?" Iris suggested. "It's such a famous restaurant right in our neighborhood." However, making a reservation proved far from easy. They were told they needed a letter of recommendation, and even then, the recommender had to be a customer approved by the restaurant. "How pretentious," Regina muttered in displeasure. The fact that even they, as nouveau riche, couldn't easily access this restaurant wounded their pride. That afternoon, Regina was shopping in the Beacon Hill area when she happened to pass by the Hidden Gem. The old building softly received the afternoon sunlight. The interior was impossible to see from outside. There, she witnessed an unexpected sight. Aurora stepped out of a luxury car that had stopped in front of the restaurant. Though dressed in her usual simple style, her bearing carried an unfamiliar dignity. Behind Aurora came a renowned artist Regina had seen on television. To her surprise, the artist was speaking to Aurora with the familiarity of an old friend. "Aurora, thank you for another amazing meal. I was moved again today." "The honor is mine. Thank you for coming." Regina stopped in her tracks upon hearing this exchange. Aurora's voice carried a confidence and composure she'd never heard before. From inside the restaurant, staff members emerged one after another, bowing deeply to Aurora. Their attitude wasn't that of mere colleagues, it was the behavior shown to a respected leader. "Chef, regarding today's Michelin inspector visit?" A man, likely the sous chef, approached Aurora and spoke quietly, his tone respectful. "Yes, proceed as usual," Aurora replied, her voice remarkably calm and composed. Regina, watching from behind the building, felt a wave of disbelief wash over her. The woman she had just seen entering the hidden gem was not the same person she had known, the shameful daughter who had worked at a pub. No, this Aurora was someone entirely different. Once back at home, Regina immediately called Iris. "I saw something unbelievable today." Her voice was filled with excitement. Iris listened, confused by her mother's tone. "I saw Aurora going into the hidden gem and she seemed like a regular there. No, even more than that." "No way!" Iris's voice trembled in disbelief. Together they tried to piece together old memories. Aurora's reserved demeanor, her intentional absence from social circles, and her inexplicable depth of knowledge about cuisine. Slowly, fragmented memories started to make sense. That evening, Iris and Sterling began to dig deeper into the hidden gem. The restaurant's website listed only brief details about Chef Liz's background, with no photos. But the praise was overwhelming on Gourmet magazine and various review sites. Iris found an old Gourmet interview. It says Chef Liz trained at a 3 Michelin star restaurant in France until 10 years ago. 10 years ago? Sterling pondered. That's when Aurora started pulling away from the family. Iris scrolled through photos from the baby shower on her smartphone. There was one of Aurora's back as she left the venue. Looking at it now, it wasn't the posture of someone defeated at all. It was full of composure, of confidence. "Could we have—" Iris's voice faltered, swallowed by the silence of the room. The next morning, Regina returned to the hidden gem, this time during the early morning preparations. Delivery trucks were unloading premium ingredients one after another. Among them, Aurora could be seen carefully inspecting each one. Dressed in a crisp white chef's coat, she looked like a completely different person, nothing like the daughter Regina had known. The staff worked efficiently under her direction, an unwavering trust evident in their every move. It was a trust that had been built over the course of 10 years. Regina felt her chest tighten with a mixture of guilt and disbelief. The daughter she had once dismissed as a mere pub employee was, in fact, a renowned chef, respected by everyone in her field. And they hadn't noticed this fact for an entire decade. The truth came to light 2 weeks after the baby shower. Taste of Boston, the city's leading gourmet magazine, ran a special feature on the Hidden Gem's 10th anniversary. Aurora's photograph was proudly displayed on the cover, her dignified expression captured as she stood in her kitchen, wearing her white chef's coat. The headline read, "The True Face of Chef Liz, the Truth Behind the 2 Michelin Star Hidden Gem." Iris happened to pick up the magazine in a hospital waiting room. When she saw her sister's photo, she nearly collapsed. The article detailed Aurora's career. After graduating from Boston University 10 years ago, Aurora Wilson trained at prestigious restaurants in France. Upon returning to the U.S., she opened the Hidden Gem, quickly becoming the beloved protégée of legendary chef Jean-Pierre Dubois. The article detailed her brilliant career, her training in France, her experience at 3 Michelin-starred restaurants, and her entrepreneurial success after returning home. Everything had been perfectly planned. The cuisine of Chef Liz, aka Aurora Wilson, is creative, combining classic French techniques with modern arrangements. Her signature dish, Landscape of Memories, beautifully expresses French traditions while using New England ingredients. Iris was so absorbed in the article that she forgot about her prenatal checkup. There was a side of her sister she had never known. Aurora was acclaimed by global gastronomes. The hidden gem is consistently booked 3 months in advance. However, this isn't merely about popularity. Aurora Wilson maintains a policy of welcoming only guests who truly understand value. Reservations require letters of recommendation from existing customers. This strict attitude reflects her sincere approach to cuisine. After finishing the article, Iris immediately called her mother, but Regina had already seen the article. She sat in her living room, trembling as she read it over and over. Aurora Wilson's restaurant isn't just a place for fine dining. It's an intersection of art and culture. Harvard professors, artists, writers, they all love this place as their hideaway. The article ended with a quote from Aurora. "In cuisine, what matters isn't superficial decoration but essential value, and I want to share that joy only with those who can understand it." Those words seemed like a quiet protest against her family. That evening, Sterling attended an executive meeting at his investment bank. An unusual expression of anxiety showed on his face. In the conference room, "Is it true that the Hidden Gem's owner chef is your sister-in-law?" the chairman asked with a smirk. "We've been trying to get a reservation for over 6 months without success. Couldn't you do something through your family connection?" Sterling struggled to respond. Having previously explained that his sister-in-law worked at a pub, he couldn't now acknowledge the truth. I apologize. I'm not familiar with the details." The conference room was filled with a heavy atmosphere. The bank executives' gazes pierced Sterling. Many of them knew that obtaining a reservation at the Hidden Gem had become a status symbol. That night, Regina and Iris met in front of the Hidden Gem. Warm light spilled from the restaurant's windows. Inside, the full restaurant's upper-class guests were enjoying an elegant evening with Aurora's cuisine. "What have we done?" Iris's voice trembled. That day, telling her to go to a pub, Regina was overwhelmed with intense regret as she recalled her past behavior. She had judged her daughter based on superficial values without trying to understand her. And, most ironically, Aurora had already established a firm position in the upper-class society they so desperately aspired to join. The next morning, Regina gathered her courage and called the Hidden Gem. When she tried to make a reservation, she received the usual polite response. She was told a letter of recommendation was required. I'm Aurora Wilson's mother." Regina's voice trembled. A moment of silence on the other end. "Please wait while I check with the chef." A few minutes later, the call resumed. "We apologize, but the chef has requested that you follow the normal reservation procedure." At that moment, Regina understood everything. 10 years of contempt and scorn. She was overwhelmed by the consequences of continuously judging her daughter based on superficial values. Iris felt the same way. Despite being less than a month from her due date, she visited the Hidden Gem almost daily. All she could do was watch from afar as the aroma of cooking wafted out and satisfied customers came and went. One day, Iris gathered her courage and entered the restaurant, but Aurora was nowhere to be seen. Instead, the sous chef politely but firmly told her, "We apologize, but we are fully booked today. Reservations require a letter of recommendation from existing customers." Just then, Aurora emerged from the kitchen. The sisters' eyes met. Aurora looked at Iris with a calm expression, as if looking at a stranger. "Do you have a letter of recommendation, ma'am?" Those words weighed heavier than 10 years of revenge. Iris fled the restaurant in tears. From a distance, she could see the line of luxury cars at the Hidden Gem. Ironically, the symbol of the world they aspired to was in her sister's hands. Meanwhile, Aurora continued creating perfect dishes as usual. In her heart, there was no longer anger or hatred. Only quiet resignation remained toward her family, who couldn't understand true value. A few days later, Regina and Iris found an envelope in their mailbox. a letter written in Aurora's beautiful handwriting on high-quality paper. When opened, it contained a short message. True value lies not in superficial decoration, but in essence. If you are ready to understand that. A month after receiving Aurora's letter, Iris gave birth to a baby girl. A bouquet arrived at the hospital room, its simple elegance standing out among the other lavish flower arrangements. The card simply read, "Congratulations," but Aurora's handwriting was unmistakable. The bouquet from the hidden gem was different where the others were grand and flashy, this one was humble. A simple arrangement incorporating seasonal wildflowers exuded a gentle kindness that seemed to calm the heart of anyone who saw it. It felt like a reflection of Aurora's cuisine itself. "Mom," Iris said, holding her newborn, "what should we do?" Regina gazed out the window silently. She had already called several times, trying to get a reservation at the hidden gem, but each time she was met with polite refusals. Then one day, another letter arrived from Aurora. "If you truly want to understand, why don't you try working at the restaurant? Starting from the bottom, to understand essence, one must begin with the basics." The proposal hit Regina and Iris like a thunderbolt. Their nouveau riche pride urged an immediate rejection, but they had no other options now. 3 months after giving birth, Iris stood in the Hidden Gem's kitchen for the first time, not in a pristine white chef's coat, but in a dishwasher's apron. Regina also began working weekends as a dining room assistant. The first few weeks were brutal. Iris's hands grew rough from the unfamiliar hard work, and Regina's feet ached as if they were on poles. But through it all, Aurora showed them no special consideration. "Things of value take time to understand," was all Aurora said to them. But as time passed, they slowly began to change. While washing dishes, Iris started to feel the passion infused into each of Aurora's creations. Regina began to understand the true meaning of hospitality as she watched the delighted expressions of the customers. 6 months later, Iris had her first chance to taste Aurora's cooking. It was during a staff tasting session after a meeting. The moment the dish touched her tongue, tears welled up in Iris's eyes. In that bite, she tasted 10 years of her sister's emotions, all the love and longing Aurora had carried in silence. A year passed and both Regina and Iris had transformed. Regina was formally hired as dining room staff, and Iris became an apprentice cook. Their attitudes and values had shifted remarkably. The glamour of their former social circles no longer held any allure. Instead, they had developed the eyes to recognize true value. Regina began attending psychological counseling to confront the beliefs she had held for so long. Iris learned cooking from the very basics, gradually developing a sincere approach to her work. One night, after closing, Aurora called them both over. "Starting tomorrow, shall we meet as family?" she asked. Regina and Iris choked back tears at these words. It wasn't just forgiveness, it was the beginning of something much deeper, a new bond formed by people who had learned to understand the essence of things. The following Sunday, the Hidden Gem opened its doors for a special morning. Though it normally only served dinner, the restaurant was open that day for Regina, Iris, and the 18-month-old baby. Aurora prepared a special brunch for her family, a series of dishes without extravagant decorations but filled with deep love. The wildflowers on the table mirrored the simplicity of the bouquet that had arrived at the hospital that day, delicate, unpretentious, but full of warmth. "This is my true feeling," Aurora said, placing a dish before them. "I'm proud that you've learned to see essence rather than appearance." Outside the window, the Boston streets were bathed in the soft glow of morning light. The red brick walls of the Hidden Gem quietly stood witness to this new chapter in their family's story. It was the dawn of a new beginning, one earned through the understanding of true value. Does success still hold its value if it's overshadowed by prejudice? When the truth is revealed, who is the real loser in this story? Looking back, Aurora's story is more than just a stunning reversal. It is proof of a harsh reality. Those who judge the loudest often understand the least. Regina and Iris once took pride in their social status, yet they were the ones left behind, clinging to the shallow ideals they mistook for true value. They mocked Aurora, but in the end, they stood outside, desperately seeking a place in the world she had built from the ground up. The real question is, can forgiveness come easily when wounds have been left to fester for a decade? Aurora didn't seek revenge through cruel words or impulsive actions. She let her unwavering success speak for itself. Now that Regina and Iris must start from scratch, can they ever truly grasp the struggle Aurora endured? Do they even deserve a second chance? This story is a reminder. Never underestimate someone just because they choose silence. True success doesn't need to be flaunted, but when revealed, it can be the most powerful response of all. What do you think? If you were Aurora, would you forgive them or let them experience the same dismissal they once showed you? Share your thoughts below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more compelling stories.
I never expected a letter from my dead father to change everything. But there it was, sitting in my grandmother's attic, tucked away in a dusty metal lockbox I'd been avoiding for months. My name is Avery, and until yesterday, I thought I knew exactly who I was, just another marketing professional trying to make it in Chicago. Raised by my grandparents after my mother decided her dreams were bigger than raising a kid. Pretty standard stuff, really. But that letter changed everything. Found this while cleaning out Dad's old things, my grandmother Rose said, handing me the lockbox. He wanted you to have it when you turned 28. I remember staring at that box, my hands trembling slightly as I worked the key into the lock. Inside, beneath a stack of old photographs and what looked like investment papers, was an envelope with my name written in my father's familiar scrawl. My dearest Avery, the letter began. If you're reading this, I'm no longer here, but there's something you need to know. I've set aside a trust fund for your education, enough to put you through any college you choose, plus some extra to help you start your life. Your mother Linda knows about this money. She promised to make sure you got it when the time came. The room started spinning. College money? I'd worked 3 jobs through university, taken out massive student loans that I was still paying off. My mother had always claimed there was nothing left after Dad died. There should be close to $500,000, the letter continued. I know it won't make up for me not being there, but I wanted to make sure you had every opportunity. Rose, I called out, my voice cracking. Did you know about this? My grandmother's face fell as she read the letter. Oh, sweetheart. No. I had no idea Michael had set this up. I pulled out my phone, hands shaking as I scrolled through my mother's latest Instagram posts. There she was, lounging on a beach in Bali with her new fiancé Ryan, a guy barely 10 years older than me. The diamond ring on her finger glinted in the sunset, probably worth more than my yearly salary. She's been living off my college fund, I whispered, the realization hitting me like a punch to the gut. All those exotic vacations, the designer clothes, that condo in the Gold Coast. That was my future she was spending. Rose sat beside me, her hand warm on my shoulder. Linda. She's always been good at justifying things to herself. But this. She shook her head, looking more disappointed than angry. I thought about all those nights I'd spent working late shifts at the campus coffee shop, the scholarships I'd fought for, the loans I'd accepted because I had no other choice. All while my mother was living it up with money that was meant for me. My phone buzzed, speaking of the devil. A text from Linda, sweetie. Ryan and I just booked our wedding venue. The Four Seasons. Can you believe it? We need to talk about your bridesmaid dress. I stared at the message, feeling something shift inside me. The hurt was still there, but now it was crystallizing into something harder, something that demanded action. I need to know everything, I told Rose, carefully folding my father's letter. Every account, every transaction, every lie she's told since Dad died. Rose nodded slowly, understanding in her eyes. Your grandfather kept copies of all Michael's financial records in his study. We can start there. As I followed her downstairs, I thought about my half-brother Ethan, Linda's son from her second marriage. He was 16 now, probably having no idea about any of this. I wondered if she was stealing from him too. One thing was certain, my mother was about to learn that some debts can't be paid off with someone else's money. And I was finally ready to collect. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I spent hours going through my grandfather's meticulously organized files, piecing together the trail of my father's money. By morning, I had enough bank statements and legal documents to make my blood boil. The Four Seasons hotel lobby felt too bright, too pristine as I waited for my mother. She'd suggested meeting here to discuss wedding plans, completely oblivious to what was coming. I watched her stride in, designer handbag swinging, looking exactly like her Instagram photos, perfectly coiffed, expensive highlights. Not a wrinkle in sight thanks to whatever procedures she'd treated herself to with my money. Darling. She air-kissed both my cheeks, her diamond ring catching the light. You look tired. Are you sleeping enough? I've been doing some interesting reading, I said, sliding the folder across the table. About Dad's trust fund. The change in her expression was subtle, a slight tightening around her eyes, a barely noticeable pause before she reached for her water glass. Oh, sweetie, not this again. We've been through this. Your father left barely enough to cover the funeral expenses. Funny how there was enough for your trip to the Maldives last year. I pulled out a bank statement. Or that penthouse you bought in 2018. The one you sold for double the price 6 months later. Those were investments, Avery. Smart financial decisions that you made with money that wasn't yours. My voice stayed steady, even as my hands shook under the table. Dad left that money for my education. You were just the trustee. Linda's perfectly maintained facade cracked slightly. You don't understand what it was like after your father died. I was alone, barely 30, with a child to raise. Which you didn't do, I cut in. Grandmother and grandfather raised me while you were off, finding yourself in Europe. I needed time to heal. Her voice rose slightly, drawing glances from nearby tables. She lowered it again, leaning forward. Besides, look how well you turned out. You're strong, independent. You didn't need that money handed to you on a silver platter. I almost laughed at the irony. No, you needed it handed to you instead. Tell me, does Ryan know about any of this? That hit home. Linda's face paled slightly. Leave Ryan out of this. He has nothing to do with. With what? The fact that you stole from your own daughter? That you're planning this ridiculous wedding with money that should have paid for my college education? Keep your voice down, she hissed, glancing around nervously. What do you want from me, Avery? Money? Is that it? Fine, I'll write you a check. I want you to tell the truth. To Ryan, to Ethan, to everyone. About who you really are. Linda's laugh was brittle. Or what? You'll cause a scene. Ruin my wedding? Think carefully about this, sweetheart. You're not the only one who can dig up the past. The threat in her voice was clear, but instead of fear, I felt a strange calm settle over me. What could you possibly have on me, Mom? I'm not the one who abandoned my child. I'm not the one who stole $500,000. I did what I had to do to survive, she said, gathering her things. You'll understand when you're older. When you have children of your own. As she stood to leave, I called after her. I'm giving you 1 week, Mom. Tell them yourself, or I will. And I have copies of everything. She paused, her back to me. You know, you sound just like your father right now. Always so righteous, so sure of everything being black and white. She turned, and for a moment, I saw something vulnerable in her eyes. Life isn't that simple, Avery. After she left, I sat there for a long time, staring at my reflection in the window. I looked tired, yes, but there was something else there too, a determination I'd inherited from my father. A strength I'd learned from my grandparents. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Hey sis, it's Ethan. Can we talk? Mom's acting weird, and I found some strange papers in her office. I smiled grimly. Looks like I wasn't the only one starting to ask questions. Meeting Ethan at the local coffee shop felt surreal. My half-brother looked nothing like the photos Linda posted on social media, no carefully curated poses or designer clothes. Just a lanky teenager in a worn hoodie, nervously shredding a paper napkin. "I found these in Mom's home office," he said, sliding a manila envelope across the table. "I was looking for my birth certificate for my driver's license application, and..." Inside were more bank statements, but these were different from the ones I'd found. These showed regular transfers from what appeared to be Ethan's college fund into Linda's personal account. "She's doing it to you too," I whispered, my coffee growing cold and forgotten. Ethan nodded, his eyes fixed on the table. "My dad, before the divorce, he set up accounts for me. Mom was supposed to be managing them until I turned 18. The familiar anger bubbled up, but now it wasn't just for me. "How did you find out about me? About what happened with my father's trust?" "I overheard Mom arguing with Ryan last night. She was pretty worked up about your meeting." He finally looked up, and I saw my own hurt reflected in his eyes. "Is it true? Did she really abandon you when you were little?" Before I could answer, my phone buzzed. A text from Ryan: "We need to talk. Linda's not telling me the whole story. Can you meet? Looks like your mom's perfect engagement is starting to crack," I said, showing Ethan the message. He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture so similar to our mother's it made my chest tight. "She's been acting crazy since you confronted her. Yesterday, I caught her looking up houses in Europe online. Ryan has no idea, but I think she's planning to run," I finished. "Just like she did when I was young." The realization hit me hard. She's going to try to disappear with whatever money she has left. "What do we do?" Ethan asked, suddenly looking younger than his 16 years. The memory hit me unexpectedly, sitting at our old kitchen table while my father helped me with homework. His voice gentle as he explained complex math problems. "Education is your future, Avery," he'd said. "No one can take that away from you." But someone had. And now she was about to do it again. "First," I said, pulling out my laptop, "we need to protect what's left of your college fund. I have a friend who's a financial lawyer. She can help us set up a trust that Linda can't touch." Ethan's phone chimed, Linda, asking where he was. His hands shook slightly as he typed a reply about studying at the library. "She'll figure it out eventually," he said. "That we're working together. Let her." I was surprised by the steel in my own voice. "I'm done letting her run away from what she's done." Just then, Rose called. "Avery, you need to come to the house. Now. Linda's here with some realtor, talking about selling the place. She's claiming she has power of attorney from when your grandfather was sick." My stomach dropped. The family home, where my father had grown up, where I'd spent my happiest years after Linda left. Of course she'd try to take that too. "I'll be there in 20 minutes, I said, already gathering my things. To Ethan, I added, "Want to see where I grew up?" He nodded, looking both scared and determined. As we headed to my car, another text came through, this time from Linda: "Whatever you think you're doing, stop. You have no idea what you're getting yourself into." I showed it to Ethan, who read it with a grimace. Classic mom. When she can't control something, she tries to scare it away. "Well, I'm not going anywhere," I said, starting the engine. "And this time, she's the one who should be scared." As we drove toward my grandmother's house, I glanced at Ethan. He was staring out the window, looking lost in thought. "Hey," I said softly. "We're going to fix this. All of it." He managed a small smile. "Yeah. Together." For the first time since finding my father's letter, I felt something beyond anger and betrayal. I had an ally now, someone else who understood exactly what we were dealing with. And maybe, just maybe, that would make all the difference. The realtor was already gone by the time Ethan and I reached my grandmother's house, but the damage was done. Rose sat at the kitchen table, her normally steady hands shaking as she held a stack of papers. She forged my signature, Rose said quietly. On documents giving her control of the house. Henry's house. I felt Ethan stiffen beside me. That's not possible, he said. Mom wouldn't. But his voice trailed off as Rose spread the papers across the table. There it was, Rose's signature, perfectly mimicked on power of attorney documents dated just weeks after my grandfather's death. She must have been planning this for months, I said, studying the paperwork. Even before she got engaged to Ryan. My phone buzzed again, Ryan's third attempt to meet. This time, I replied, dinner tonight. Bring whatever documents you have about the wedding venue deposits. What are you thinking? Rose asked, watching me carefully. I'm thinking it's time we talk to the police. The words felt heavy, final. This isn't just about the trust fund anymore. This is fraud. Ethan's face went pale. You mean? Like jail? Before I could respond, the front door opened. Linda swept in, wearing the same confident smile she'd had at the Four Seasons, but something was different. There was an edge to her movements, a barely contained desperation in her eyes. Family meeting? How sweet. She looked at Ethan. Sweetheart, go wait in the car. No, he said, and I heard our father's steel in his voice. I'm staying. Linda's smile flickered. Fine. Then let me make this simple. I'm selling this house. The market's hot, and it's the practical thing to do. Rose doesn't need all this space anymore. You mean you need the money? I cut in. For what, Mom? Your escape plan? Don't be dramatic, Avery. I'm simply planning to run. Rose's quiet voice cut through Linda's explanation like a knife. Just like you did when Michael died? Linda's facade cracked slightly. I did what I had to do. I was suffocating in this town, in this life. And now? She gestured around the kitchen. Now you're all trying to suffocate me again. By asking for the truth? I stepped closer. By expecting you to face what you've done? You have no idea what it's like, she hissed. To get older, to become invisible. Ryan is my chance to start over, to be someone new. Someone who steals from her children? Ethan's voice cracked. Who forges documents and lies? Linda turned to him, reaching out, but he stepped back. Something flashed across her face, pain, fear, or maybe both. I've secured the venue, she said, her voice tight. Paid the deposits. The wedding is happening in 3 weeks, and then you'll disappear with whatever money you can grab, I finished. Including what you get from selling this house. She didn't deny it. Instead, she pulled out her phone, showing us a screen full of text messages. Ryan's family has been asking questions. About my past, about you, Avery. About why my own daughter won't be my maid of honor. Her smile turned cruel. If this wedding falls apart, if Ryan leaves me, I'll make sure everyone knows exactly why. Including what really happened the night your father died. The room went silent. Rose gasped softly. What are you talking about? I asked, but my throat had gone dry. Ask your grandmother, Linda said, heading for the door. Ask her why she and Henry really took you in that night. Why they were so eager to keep you away from me. After she left, I turned to Rose, whose face had gone ashen. Grandma? There are things. She started, then stopped, pressing her hands flat against the table. Things about that night that we never told you. That your father made us promise never to tell. Ethan moved closer to me, and I felt his hands slip into mine, squeezing gently. Whatever was coming, whatever truth Linda was threatening to expose, we'd face it together. But looking at Rose's face, I wasn't sure I was ready for what I was about to learn. Rose's hands trembled as she pulled a dusty photo album from the top shelf of her closet. Ethan had gone home, leaving us alone with the weight of Linda's threat hanging in the air. Your father wasn't just protecting you from Linda's instability, Rose said, opening the album to reveal photos I'd never seen before. He was protecting you from the truth about that night. The first photo showed my parents at their wedding, young, beautiful, hopeful. The next showed them arguing outside our old house, my father's face twisted with anger I'd never seen before. Linda was having an affair, Rose continued, her voice barely above a whisper. With your father's business partner. The night Michael died, he discovered they'd been embezzling from the company for months. My stomach lurched. What? He confronted them at the office. There was a fight. Rose's voice cracked. The police ruled it an accident, Michael's fall down the stairs. But Linda and James were there. They were the only ones who knew what really happened. The room started spinning. I gripped the edge of the bed, trying to steady myself. Are you saying she was involved in Dad's death? Nothing was ever proven. James left town the next day, and Linda. Rose closed the album. Linda took what money she could and ran. We fought for custody because we knew something wasn't right. My phone buzzed, a text from Ryan, meeting cancelled. Linda explained everything. I'm sorry, but I think it's best if you stay away from the wedding. Of course she'd gotten to him first. I showed Rose the message. She's trying to isolate you, Rose said. Just like she did back then. Making everyone doubt the truth. I stood up, pacing the room. So what do I do? If I push harder, she'll spin this story her way. Make it look like I'm the crazy one, trying to ruin her perfect new life. There might be a way, Rose said, pulling out another envelope. Your grandfather. He kept investigating, even after the police closed the case. He hired a private investigator. Inside were surveillance photos, bank statements, and a handwritten statement from James's secretary about what she'd overheard that night. Henry was waiting for the right time, Rose explained. He wanted to protect you until you were old enough to handle the truth. My hands shook as I read through the documents. Does Ethan know any of this? No one does. Except Linda. Rose touched my arm. Avery, if you use this information, there's no going back. It won't just expose the theft, it could reopen the investigation into Michael's death. I thought about Linda's threat, about her plans to sell our family home, about Ethan's college fund slowly disappearing. About my father, who died trying to protect his company and his daughter's future. My phone buzzed again. Ethan, Mom's acting weird. She's packing things up, talking about moving the wedding up. What's going on? She's planning to run again, I said, more to myself than Rose. Before everything falls apart. Rose watched me carefully. What are you going to do? I looked at the evidence in my hands, proof of not just financial fraud, but possibly something much darker. The truth could destroy Linda's new life, protect Ethan's future, and maybe finally bring justice for my father. But it could also tear apart what was left of our family. I need to talk to Ethan first, I said finally. He deserves to know what kind of person his mother really is before I do this. And then? I gathered the documents, my decision crystallizing. Then I'm going to give Linda a choice. She can come clean about everything, the money, the fraud, what really happened that night, or I'll do it for her. As I headed for the door, Rose called after me. Avery. Your father wanted to protect you from this truth. Are you sure you're ready to live with the consequences of exposing it? I thought about my father's letter, about his dreams for my future, about the years of lies that had followed his death. I'm not the one who needs protection anymore, I said. And neither is Ethan. The truth about that night had waited long enough. It was time for everyone to face it, especially Linda. The wedding rehearsal dinner was in full swing when I walked into the Four Seasons ballroom, grandfather's evidence folder tucked under my arm. Ethan stood by the entrance, looking pale but determined in his new suit. Mom's been drinking since 4, he whispered. Ryan's parents keep asking why you weren't at the rehearsal. I scanned the room. Linda sat at the head table, glass of champagne in hand, that perfect smile plastered on her face. Ryan stood beside her, his hand on her shoulder. Completely unaware that his fiancée was planning to disappear with whatever money she could grab before the actual wedding. You don't have to be here for this, I told Ethan. He squared his shoulders. Yes, I do. I made my way toward the head table, but Linda saw me coming. She was up and moving before I got halfway there, intercepting me near the dessert table. I warned you to stay away, she hissed, still somehow maintaining her smile for the guests nearby. Did you warn James to stay away too? I kept my voice low, watching her face. The night Dad died? The champagne glass trembled slightly in her hand. You don't know what you're talking about. Actually, I do. I pulled out the first photo, Linda and James leaving the office building the night of my father's death. Grandfather had quite a file on you too. The affair, the embezzlement, the mysterious accident. Keep your voice down, she grabbed my arm, nails digging in. Why? Afraid Ryan might hear about your past? Or his parents? I pulled away. Or maybe you're afraid the police might want to reopen Dad's case? Something dark flashed across her face. You want to play this game? Fine. She turned toward the room, raising her voice. Everyone. My daughter has something she'd like to share. The room fell silent. Ryan appeared at Linda's side, looking confused. Ethan moved closer to me, and I felt his hand slip into mine. Go ahead, sweetie, Linda's voice dripped with false concern. Tell everyone how you've been threatening me, trying to extort money with wild accusations. How you've been jealous of my happiness, desperate for attention. That's not, I started, but she cut me off. It's been so hard, watching her struggle with these delusions, Linda continued, tears welling up perfectly in her eyes. First the lies about her college fund, now these horrible stories about her father's death. Ryan wrapped an arm around her shoulders. I think you should leave, he told me, his face hard. Show them the evidence, Ethan whispered, but my hands were shaking too badly to open the folder. Linda seized the moment. See? More invented documents, more desperate attempts to ruin my special day. She turned to Ryan's parents. I'm so sorry you have to witness this. She's been this way since her father died, making up stories, blaming me. The room was spinning. Faces turned away from me, whispers started. I saw pity in some eyes, disgust in others. Linda had played it perfectly, the concerned mother, the victim of her troubled daughter's delusions. Tell them about James, I said desperately. About the money you stole, about what really happened that night. Security, Ryan called out. Please escort her out. As two men in dark suits approached, Linda leaned close to me. I warned you, she whispered. You're just like your father, so sure of yourself, so righteous. Look where that got him. The admission hit me like a physical blow. But before I could react, the security guards had my arms. Wait, Ethan stepped forward. I have proof too. Mom's been stealing from my college fund, I have the bank statements. Ethan, honey, Linda's voice turned sickeningly sweet. We talked about this. Those were necessary investments for your future. You're just confused, letting your sister fill your head with lies. I watched helplessly as she pulled Ethan away from me, watched his face crumple as she whispered something in his ear. The security guards were already moving me toward the door. The police will be very interested in these harassment claims, Ryan called after me. Stay away from Linda, or we'll press charges. The last thing I saw before the doors closed was Linda's triumphant smile, and Ethan's defeated expression as she led him back to the table. She'd won. Again. Just like she had the night my father died. I was halfway home from the rehearsal dinner when Ethan's text came through, Mom's at the house. She's taking everything. I hit the brakes, pulling an illegal U-turn. Rose's house, my childhood home, was only 10 minutes away. Linda couldn't have gotten there much before me, not with all those wedding guests to placate. The moving truck in the driveway proved me wrong. Rose stood on the front porch, blocking the door while two movers carried out boxes. Linda supervised from the lawn, still in her rehearsal dinner dress, phone pressed to her ear. "You can't stop this," she called out as I slammed my car door. "The power of attorney is legal. I'm well within my rights. To steal from another child?" I held up my phone, showing her the screen. "I just got off the phone with James Morrison. Remember him? Your old partner?" Linda froze. The phone slipped from her hand. "Turns out he's been wanting to clear his conscience," I continued, walking closer. "Especially after I sent him grandfather's evidence file. He's talking to the police right now." "You're bluffing." But her voice shook. "Mom." Ethan's voice cut through the tension as he ran up the driveway. "The realtor just called Ryan. She told him everything about the house sale. He's on his way." Linda's composure cracked. "Stop the loading," she shouted at the movers. "Now." "Why?" I asked, letting the anger I'd held back for years surface. "Afraid Ryan might learn the truth? About the money? About Dad?" "You don't understand," she hissed, grabbing my arm. I had to get out. "Your father was going to ruin everything, expose everything. James and we didn't mean for him to fall." The confession hung in the air. Rose gasped. Ethan stopped mid-stride. "Say that again," came Ryan's voice from behind us. Linda spun around. Her fiancé stood at the end of the driveway, his face ashen. Behind him, a police car pulled up, lights flashing. "Ryan, please," Linda's voice turned sugary sweet. "It's not what you think." "I heard everything, Linda." He held up his phone. "The realtor sent me recordings of your conversations about selling this house. Then I get here and hear you confess to..." "What exactly?" "It was an accident," she whispered, but her eyes darted toward her car. "We just wanted him to listen, to understand." "Mrs. Callahan?" One of the officers approached. "We need to ask you some questions about the death of Michael Callahan." I watched my mother's perfect facade finally shatter completely. Her shoulders slumped, the years of lies and manipulation catching up all at once. "You did this," she said, turning to me. "Your father would be ashamed." "No," Rose's firm voice cut through. "Michael would be proud. Proud that his daughter finally exposed the truth. Proud that she protected not just his legacy, but her brother too." Linda looked at Ethan, reaching for him one last time, but he stepped back, moving closer to me. "Miss Callahan," the officer said, "we'll need to see those documents you mentioned." As I handed over the evidence file, Linda's shoulders straightened. The mask slipped back on, though now we could all see through it. "You think this makes you better than me?" she asked as the officers led her toward their car. "You think the truth sets you free? Wait until you're older, until life starts slipping away. Then you'll understand why I did everything I did." I watched them drive away, Ryan's car following close behind. The moving truck pulled out empty, leaving boxes scattered across the lawn like the pieces of our broken family. "What happens now?" Ethan asked quietly. I looked at the house, really looked at it. The place where my father had lived and died, where my grandparents had raised me, where the truth had finally come to light. "Now," I said, putting an arm around my brother's shoulders, "we start over. The right way." Rose joined us, her hand warm on my back. "Together," she added. For the first time since finding my father's letter, I felt the weight of the past lifting. The truth hadn't set us free exactly, but it had given us something better, a chance to build something new from the ashes of Linda's lies. 6 months after Linda's arrest, I stood in the visiting room of the county jail, watching my mother age in real time behind the bulletproof glass. The designer clothes and perfect makeup were gone, replaced by a prison jumpsuit and dark roots showing in her graying hair. James took a plea deal, she said, her voice thin through the speaker. 20 years for his role in your father's death. They're offering me 15 if I confess. I didn't respond. I wasn't there for updates on her case. Why did you come, Avery? She pressed her hand against the glass. To see how far I've fallen. I came because Ethan asked me to. I pulled out the college acceptance letter he'd received yesterday. He got into Stanford. Full scholarship. Something flickered across her face, pride, regret, or maybe just resignation. He always was smart. Like his sister. The detective found Dad's original will, I continued, watching her carefully. The trust fund wasn't just for college. He left enough for both of us to start our own businesses, to chase our dreams without fear. Linda's hand dropped from the glass. I was afraid too, you know. Of getting older, of becoming invisible. Your father. He always knew exactly who he was, what he wanted. I never had that certainty. So you took it from us instead. She flinched. I told myself I deserved it. That I'd earned it after years of being Michael Callahan's wife, of living in his shadow. She laughed bitterly. Now look at me. I'll be almost 70 when I get out. That's not why I'm here either. I pulled out one final document, the deed to the family home. Rose is signing it over to me and Ethan. We're going to restore it, make it a home again. Why are you telling me this? Because Dad would have wanted you to know. He believed in second chances, in doing the right thing even when it's hard. I stood up. That's what I'm trying to do now. By forgiving me? Her voice cracked. No. By letting go of the need for revenge. By building something new instead of destroying what's left. As I turned to leave, she called out. Wait. There's something you should know. About the night your father died. She pressed closer to the glass. He tried to help us, even after discovering what we'd done. Said we could find a way to make it right. That's who your father really was. I nodded slowly. I know. That's why I'm here. Outside, Ethan waited in my car, papers spread across his lap, college housing forms, scholarship documents. Dreams our father had wanted for both of us. How was she? He asked as I slid into the driver's seat. Different. Smaller somehow. I started the engine. Ready to go home? He gathered his papers, smiling. Yeah. Rose said she's making pot roast. Dad's recipe. We drove in comfortable silence until Ethan spoke again. You know what's weird? I always thought Mom was so strong, so sure of everything. But you're the strong one. You faced the truth even when it hurt. We both did, I reminded him. At home, Rose was waiting on the porch, surrounded by paint swatches for the house's renovation. The afternoon sun caught the silver in her hair, reminding me of all the years she'd spent holding our family together. Later that night, I found myself in my father's old study, now slowly being transformed into a home office where I'd run my new marketing consultancy. On the wall hung his old business degree next to my new one, paid for with my own money, earned my own way. I opened his letter one last time, the paper now soft from repeated handling. But instead of anger or pain, I felt something different, peace. Not because justice had been served, but because I'd finally understood what Dad had tried to teach me all along. Sometimes the greatest revenge isn't in destroying what hurt you, but in building something beautiful from the wreckage it left behind. On my desk sat a framed photo, me, Ethan, and Rose on the porch, paint-stained and laughing as we worked on the house. Next to it lay the business plan for my new company, its mission statement simple but clear, building futures, one dream at a time. Just like my father would have wanted.
I never expected to find secrets about my family while cleaning out Grandma Rose's attic. But life has a way of dropping bombshells when you least expect them. My name is Mallory, Mally to anyone who knows me, and until yesterday, I thought I knew everything about my family's history. Turns out, I didn't know the half of it. The letter fell out of an old cookbook, yellowed and creased from years of being hidden between recipes for pot roast and apple pie. At first, I almost tossed it in the donation pile with everything else. But something about the way it was folded, tucked so carefully into that specific page, made me pause. Dear Rose, it began in unfamiliar handwriting. I know what you did. The truth about the Thompson estate and the missing inheritance will come out eventually. Your granddaughter deserves to know what really happened that summer. My hands started shaking. I had to sit down on one of the dusty boxes, sending up a cloud that made me sneeze. The letter wasn't signed, but it was dated just 3 months before Grandma Rose passed away. I pulled out my phone and called the one person who might have answers. Uncle Greg? It's Mally. I need to talk to you about Grandma Rose. The silence on the other end lasted so long I thought we'd lost connection. Finally, his voice came through, tight with tension. What did you find? A letter. Something about the Thompson estate, Anne. Don't say another word over the phone, he cut me off. Meet me at Carson's diner in an hour. Anne Mally? Don't tell anyone else about this. The drive to Carson's felt like it took forever. I kept glancing at the letter on my passenger seat, half expecting it to disappear like some kind of hallucination. The diner was nearly empty when I arrived, just a couple of truckers at the counter and Uncle Greg in a back booth. Looking like he'd aged 10 years since I'd last seen him at Christmas. Show me, he said before I could even sit down. I handed him the letter, watching his face as he read it. His jaw clenched, and he closed his eyes for a moment. I was hoping this would stay buried. What would stay buried? Uncle Greg, what's going on? He folded the letter carefully, then pushed it back across the table. There are people in this town who aren't what they seem, Mally. Your grandmother knew that better than anyone. She had her reasons for keeping certain things quiet. That's not an answer, I said, frustration building. Why are you being so cryptic? Because some truths are dangerous, he replied, leaning forward. Especially when they involve people like Vivian Lawson. The name hit me like a bucket of cold water. Vivian Lawson, the sweet older lady who ran the local garden club and always brought casseroles to funeral homes. What could she possibly have to do with any of this? Listen carefully, Uncle Greg continued, his voice barely above a whisper. That house you're living in? Your grandmother's house? There's more to it than you know. Much more. But before I tell you everything, you need to be absolutely sure you want to know. Because once you do, there's no going back. I thought about the letter, about Grandma Rose's final months. About all the times I'd caught her staring out the window with that worried look on her face. I need to know. He nodded slowly. Then start by being careful who you trust. Especially if you meet anyone new in town. And whatever you do, don't let Vivian Lawson know you found that letter. As if on cue, the diner's bell chimed. We both looked up to see Vivian herself walking in, her signature pearl necklace gleaming under the fluorescent lights. She smiled and waved, heading our way. Uncle Greg stood up quickly. Remember what I said, he muttered, then louder, good to see you, kiddo. Think about that insurance policy we discussed. He was gone before Vivian reached our table, leaving me alone with my racing thoughts and a woman who, according to my uncle, was somehow at the center of a mystery I didn't yet understand. After my unsettling conversation with Uncle Greg, I needed a distraction. That's how I ended up agreeing to meet Jake Lawson for coffee, despite my better judgment. We'd been messaging through a dating app for a week, and his photos didn't do him justice, tall, with kind eyes and the sort of smile that made you want to trust him immediately. So you're living in your grandmother's old place, he asked, stirring his coffee. The Victorian on Maple? I nodded, trying not to think about the letter hidden in my purse. Been there about 6 months now. Still finding surprises in every corner. My mother talks about that house sometimes, Jake said. Says it's one of the prettiest in town. She's actually good friends with most of the garden club ladies. My stomach dropped. Your mother wouldn't happen to be Vivian Lawson, would she? His face lit up. You know her? Mom's amazing, she practically runs this town's social circle. We should all have dinner together sometime. Before I could formulate a response, the cafe door chimed. As if summoned by our conversation, Vivian Lawson herself walked in, wearing her signature pearls and a perfectly coordinated outfit. Jake, sweetheart, she called out, making her way to our table. What a wonderful surprise. Jake stood to hug her, and I noticed how his whole demeanor shifted, less confident, more eager to please. Mom, this is Mallory Thompson. Mally, my mother. Vivian's smile didn't quite reach her eyes as she looked at me. Thompson? Rose's granddaughter? That's right, I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. We met briefly at the diner yesterday. Oh yes, with Gregory. She pulled up a chair without asking. How is your uncle these days? We haven't spoken in years, not since that unfortunate business with the property lines. Jake looked confused. What property lines? Ancient history, Vivian waved her hand dismissively. Though speaking of property, Mally, have you considered selling that big old house? It must be so much work for a single woman. I'm not interested in selling, I said firmly. Mother, Jake warned, but Vivian continued. I only mention it because I know several buyers who'd love that location. The Historical Society's been eyeing it for years. She leaned forward, lowering her voice. Between us, there are some structural issues you might not know about. Your grandmother was very private about such things. My coffee turned bitter in my mouth. Was this what Uncle Greg meant about being careful? The house is fine, I said. I had it inspected before moving in. Of course, dear. Vivian patted my hand, her rings cold against my skin. I just worry. That house has such history, wouldn't want anything unfortunate to happen. Jake cleared his throat. Mom, didn't you have that garden club meeting? Oh. She checked her watch. You're right. Mally, we simply must have you over for dinner soon. Jake's place has such a lovely view of your grandmother's house. After she left, Jake apologized. She can be a bit intense. She's just protective. Does she often show up when you're on dates? He laughed uncomfortably. Pure coincidence. Though she does have a knack for knowing where I am. I wanted to ask more, but my phone buzzed, a text from Uncle Greg, need to talk. Found something else. Come alone. Everything okay? Jake asked. I stood up, gathering my things. Family emergency. I should go. Let me drive you. No, I said too quickly. I mean, thanks, but I've got my car. As I headed for the door, Jake called out, Mally? Would you like to have dinner tomorrow? Just us? I hesitated. Despite everything, there was something about him that made me want to say yes. But Uncle Greg's warning echoed in my head, be careful who you trust. I'll text you, I said, and hurried out before I could change my mind. In my rearview mirror, I saw Vivian's car pull out of a side street and follow Jake's truck as he drove away. Something told me that pure coincidence had nothing to do with it. Uncle Greg was waiting for me at the old boathouse by the lake, a place we used to fish when I was little. He held a manila envelope and looked like he hadn't slept. You're dating Jake Lawson, he asked before I could even say hello. How did you? Small town. He handed me the envelope. These are property records from 30 years ago. Your grandmother's house was part of a larger estate. The Lawsons lived in the carriage house back then, as tenants. I pulled out the documents, squinting at the faded text. What changed? Vivian happened. Greg leaned against the weathered railing. She married into money, then her husband died under questionable circumstances. Insurance paid out big. Next thing we knew, she was trying to claim part of the Thompson estate through some fabricated deed. My hands trembled as I read. Grandma Rose stopped her? Barely. But Vivian never forgot. He took a deep breath. That's why she's circling again. She wants what she thinks was stolen from her. The house. Power. Control. She's obsessed with social status, with owning pieces of old money families. He looked at me directly. Jake's her fourth husband's son. She adopted him, molded him. Every girlfriend who's gotten too close has mysteriously disappeared from town. My phone buzzed, a text from Jake, missing you already. Dinner tomorrow? He seems different, I said, but even I could hear the doubt in my voice. They all seem different at first. Greg pulled another paper from his pocket. This was in Rose's safety deposit box. I picked it up this morning. It was a photograph, younger versions of Grandma Rose and Vivian standing in front of my house. They were smiling, arms linked like best friends. On the back was written, "Remember who she really is." There's more, Greg said. But we need to be careful. Vivian has friends everywhere, police, city hall, real estate. One wrong move and a twig snapped behind us. We both turned to see Vivian herself stepping out from behind a tree, her pearls gleaming in the afternoon sun. Gregory Thompson, she said sweetly. Still spreading lies about me after all these years? Greg stepped in front of me. This doesn't concern you, Vivian. Everything in this town concerns me. Her smile hardened. Especially when it involves my son. Jake's not really your son, is he? The words left my mouth before I could stop them. Something dark flashed across her face. Biology is irrelevant. I raised him. I made him who he is. She took a step closer. Did Gregory tell you about his own role in all this? About how he tried to steal the estate from Rose? That's not true, Greg snapped, but I noticed his hands shaking. No. Vivian pulled out her phone. Should we call the police chief and discuss the missing documents from 1992? The ones with your signature? Greg's face went pale. You see, Mallory dear, everyone has secrets. Vivian's voice dripped with false sympathy. The question is, what are you going to do with yours? My phone buzzed again. Jake, Mom says you're at the lake with your uncle. Everything okay? You're having him follow me? I asked, anger rising. Jake worries about the people he cares about. Vivian adjusted her pearls. He's had his heart broken before, by women who didn't understand family loyalty. Is that what happened to them? They didn't understand family loyalty? Careful, dear. Her voice dropped to a whisper. That house has such old wiring. Accidents happen all the time in historical properties. Before I could respond, she turned and walked away, calling over her shoulder, "See you at dinner tomorrow." I looked at Greg, who seemed to have aged another decade in the past few minutes. What really happened in 1992? He wouldn't meet my eyes. Some mistakes can't be undone, Mally. Just be careful. Vivian doesn't make idle threats. As I drove home, I noticed a familiar car in my rearview mirror, Jake's truck, following at a discreet distance. The same way his mother had followed him earlier. The house looked different when I pulled up, darker somehow. I thought about the old wiring Vivian had mentioned, and wondered what other secrets these walls held. My phone buzzed one last time. Jake, can't wait to see you tomorrow. Don't worry about Mom, she's just protective. I stared at the message, thinking about all the other protective mothers who had driven their sons to dangerous extremes. The question was, which side of that history was I living in? The dinner with Jake started normally enough, but I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. We were at La Maison, the fanciest restaurant in town, and somehow we'd ended up at a table with a clear view of Vivian's usual spot by the window. She wasn't there tonight, but her presence lingered like a shadow. You seem distracted, Jake said, reaching across the table for my hand. Is everything okay? I pulled back slightly, pretending to adjust my napkin. Just thinking about something your mother said at the lake yesterday. His expression shifted, almost imperceptibly. Mom mentioned she ran into you. Said you seemed upset about something. Did she mention threatening me? Threatening? He laughed, but it didn't reach his eyes. Mom doesn't threaten people, Mally. She's protective, sure, but... She followed you from the coffee shop the other day, I said. And you followed me to the lake. The waiter arrived with our wine, giving Jake time to compose himself. When we were alone again, he leaned forward. Look, after what happened with Sarah. Sarah? He took a long sip of wine. My ex. She left town suddenly. Mom was worried you might do the same. So you're spying on me? It's not like that. His voice dropped. Mom's been through a lot. After my father died. Which one? The words slipped out before I could stop them. Jake's face went blank. What do you mean? Nothing. I just heard. What exactly did your uncle tell you? There was an edge to his voice I hadn't heard before. Before I could answer, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Check your email. Gee. Excuse me, I said, standing. I need to use the restroom. In the relative privacy of the bathroom stall, I opened my email. There was a single message from Greg with an attachment, a scanned newspaper article from 1992. The headline read, Local woman questions husband's death after insurance claim denied. The photo showed a younger Vivian, wearing those same pearls, standing next to a man who looked remarkably like Jake. The caption named him as Thomas Lawson, her third husband. Another text came through, she married his father 6 months later. Jake was 4. My hands were shaking as I returned to the table. Jake was on his phone, frowning. Everything okay? I asked. Mom's not feeling well, he said. She wants me to come over. Now? In the middle of dinner? He was already signaling for the check. She's alone in that big house. After what happened to Sarah? What did happen to Sarah, Jake? He froze. What? You keep mentioning her, but you never finish the story. It's complicated. He wouldn't meet my eyes. She made accusations about Mom, tried to turn me against her. Then one day, she just left. Like Thomas Lawson just left? The check holder slammed down on the table harder than necessary. I should take you home. I drove myself, remember? Right. He stood awkwardly. Look, Mom's probably just being dramatic, but I should check on her. Rain check? I watched him hurry out, already dialing his phone. Through the window, I saw him get into his truck and Vivian's car pull out from a side street to follow him. My phone buzzed one final time. Another text from Greg, don't go home. Meet me at the motel on Highway 9. Room 115. Bring the letters. I headed for my car, trying to look casual while scanning the parking lot for familiar vehicles. As I reached for my door handle, I noticed something that made my blood run cold, a small pearl, identical to the ones in Vivian's necklace. Sitting on my driver's seat. The doors were still locked. Someone had a key to my car. I backed away, fumbling for my phone. But before I could call Greg, another message came through, this one from Jake. Mom wants to know if you'd like to come over for tea tomorrow. She has some old photos of your grandmother she'd love to show you. I stared at the pearl gleaming on my seat, remembering what Uncle Greg had said about Vivian's other daughters-in-law. And wondered how many of them had received similar invitations. The motel room smelled like stale cigarettes and desperation. Uncle Greg spread photos across the bed, snapshots of Vivian through the years, always wearing those pearls, always standing next to different men. And in every photo, that same calculated smile. For husbands, Greg said, pointing to each picture. All died under mysterious circumstances. Insurance paid out on 3 of them. And Jake's real father? Thomas Lawson. The only one whose death was ruled suspicious. Greg handed me a police report. Case went cold when the detective handling it suddenly retired. Moved to Florida on a surprisingly generous pension. A knock at the door made us both jump. Greg pulled a gun from his jacket, where had that come from? And motioned me behind him. Gregory? Vivian's voice sang through the door. I know you're in there. Let's talk about old times. Greg's hand shook as he aimed at the door. Leave, Vivian. With my son's girlfriend? How rude. Keys jingled. The manager was very understanding when I explained my concerns about my mentally unstable brother-in-law. The door swung open. Vivian stood there, perfect as always, Jake hovering behind her like a shadow. Mally? His voice cracked. What's going on? Put the gun down, Gregory, Vivian said softly. Before someone gets hurt. Again. Greg's arm lowered slowly. Tell her, Vivian. Tell her what really happened in 1992. Mom? Jake stepped forward. What's he talking about? Your uncle is unwell, Vivian said, not taking her eyes off Greg. He's been spreading lies about me for years. Isn't that right, Gregory? Ever since Rose rejected you? That's not. Tell them about the forged documents, Vivian continued. How you tried to steal Rose's estate. How she caught you and chose to protect me instead of her own brother. Greg's face went ash white. You're twisting everything. Am I? Vivian pulled out her phone. Should I play the recording from that night? The one where you threatened to kill Thomas if he exposed your scheme? That's impossible, Greg whispered. You couldn't have. I keep everything, Gregory. Every secret. Every lie. She turned to me. Your grandmother knew that. It's why she trusted me with the truth about the Thompson estate. Jake moved closer to his mother, his expression hardening. You should leave, both of you. Before I call the police. Jake, please, I started, but Vivian cut me off. Oh, dear. You actually care for him, don't you? She touched her pearls. Sarah did too. Such a shame about her accident. What accident? Jake asked sharply. The one that hasn't happened yet, Vivian replied, smiling at me. Unless Mallory makes better choices than Sarah did. Greg raised the gun again. That's enough. Mom? Jake's voice shook. What are you saying? Nothing, sweetheart. Just protecting what's ours. She stepped toward me. The house belongs with family. Real family. You understand that, don't you, Mallory? I backed away, bumping into the bedside table. Something fell, a folder full of documents. As papers scattered across the floor, I saw something that made my heart stop, a photograph of my grandmother and Vivian. Standing in front of my house. But this one was different from the earlier version. In this one, they weren't smiling. And Thomas Lawson was in the background, looking terrified. Where did you get that? Vivian's mask slipped for just a moment. Rose kept copies too, Greg said quietly. Of everything. The tension in the room shifted. Jake picked up the photo, his hands trembling. Dad? Give me that, Vivian snapped, reaching for the picture. But Jake pulled back, really looking at it for the first time. What did you do? Only what was necessary, Vivian said, her voice turning cold. Everything I've done has been for you. Like Sarah's accident? I asked, finding my voice. Was that necessary too? Jake's head snapped up. What accident? Mom, what are they talking about? Vivian's hand moved to her purse. Sometimes, darling, we have to make hard choices to protect our family. I saw the glint of metal in her bag and realized with horror that Greg wasn't the only one who'd brought a gun to this conversation. The question was, who would make the first hard choice? Everything happened too fast. The glint of metal in Vivian's purse, Greg shouting a warning, Jake lunging forward, and then the deafening crack of a gunshot. The motel room exploded into chaos. I dove behind the bed as Greg and Vivian struggled for the gun. Jake stood frozen, the photograph of his father still clutched in his trembling hands. "Jake, help me!" Vivian screamed. "He's trying to kill me, just like he killed your father." Another shot, this time hitting the mirror above my head, sending glass raining down. Through the shards, I saw Greg stumble backward, clutching his shoulder. Blood seeped between his fingers. "Mom, stop!" Jake's voice cracked. "Please." But Vivian wasn't listening. She aimed the gun at Greg again, her perfect facade crumbling. "You should have stayed away, Gregory. Let sleeping dogs lie." "Tell him," Greg gasped. "Tell Jake what really happened that night." "I protected my family," Vivian snarled. "Thomas was weak. He would have ruined everything." Jake took a step back. "What are you saying?" "Your father was going to leave us," Vivian's voice softened. "Take everything we had. I couldn't let that happen. Not again." I inched toward the door, but my foot crunched on broken glass. Vivian's head snapped toward me. "Don't move, dear." She smiled that perfect smile. "We're not finished yet." "The police are coming," I bluffed. "Someone must have heard the shots." "They won't find anything suspicious," Vivian said. "Just a tragic accident. A disturbed man attacking his niece. A concerned mother protecting her son." "Like Sarah's accident?" Jake asked quietly. Something shifted in Vivian's eyes. "Sarah was going to take you away from me. They all try eventually." "What did you do to her?" "The same thing I'll have to do to Mallory." Vivian's hand steadied on the gun. "Unless she makes the right choice." "Which is?" "Sign over the house. Leave town. Never contact Jake again." I thought about my grandmother's letter, about all the women who'd disappeared from Jake's life. About Sarah, who'd probably faced this same choice. And if I refuse? Then there'll be another tragic accident. Vivian's finger tightened on the trigger. So many old houses have faulty wiring these days. "Mom, please," Jake stepped between us. "This has to stop." "Everything I've done has been for you," Vivian's voice cracked. "To protect what's ours." "By killing my father?" "He was going to destroy us." The gun wavered. "Just like she will." "They all do, eventually." Greg tried to stand but slumped against the wall. "Rose knew, didn't she? That's why she left the evidence." "Rose understood family loyalty," Vivian spat. "Until she didn't." Suddenly, sirens wailed in the distance. Real ones this time. "We're leaving," Vivian grabbed Jake's arm. "Now." "No." Jake pulled away. "Don't do this," Vivian's mask slipped completely. "Don't choose her over me. I'm your mother." "Are you?" Jake's voice was barely a whisper. "How many others have there been? How many accidents?" The sirens grew closer. Vivian's hand shook, the gun swinging between all of us. "Last chance, Mallory," she said. "The house or your life? Choose carefully." I looked at Jake, seeing the lost little boy beneath the man. At Greg, bleeding but still trying to protect me. At Vivian, whose perfect world was crumbling around her. "I choose the truth," I said. Vivian's finger squeezed the trigger just as Jake lunged for the gun. The shot went wide, hitting the wall beside me. We all scrambled for cover as she fired again and again, her screams mixing with the approaching sirens. The last thing I saw before everything went black was one of Vivian's perfect pearls rolling across the floor, leaving a trail of blood in its wake. When I came to, I wasn't sure if I was alive or dead. But the pain in my shoulder suggested I'd survived, barely. The question was, had anyone else? The hospital room was quiet except for the steady beep of monitors. My shoulder throbbed where the bullet had grazed me, but I couldn't rest. Not with Uncle Greg in surgery and Vivian still out there somewhere. Jake sat in the corner, staring at his hands. He hadn't said a word since the police had questioned us. The photograph of his father was crumpled in his pocket, stained with blood, his mother's or Greg's, I wasn't sure. A nurse appeared in the doorway. "Miss Thompson? There's a package for you at the desk. From Rose Thompson's estate attorney." The manila envelope felt heavy in my hands. Inside was a single key and a letter, dated the day before my grandmother died. "My dearest Mally," I read aloud, my voice shaking. "If you're reading this, then you've discovered the truth about Vivian. The key opens the safe in my study, the one behind the portrait. What you find there will explain everything. But be careful. She'll come for it." Jake's head snapped up. "The house. That's where she'll go." As if on cue, my phone buzzed with a security alert. Someone had disabled the alarm system at my grandmother's house. "We should call the police," I said, but Jake was already standing. "She won't talk to them. But she might talk to me." The drive to my house was tense. Jake's knuckles were white on the steering wheel. "I should have seen it," he whispered. "All those years, all those accidents. She fooled everyone. Not your grandmother." He pulled up to the curb, killing the headlights. "That's why she had to die, wasn't it?" My blood ran cold. "What?" "Mom brought her tea every Sunday. Said it was tradition." His voice cracked. "Rose started getting sick after that. Light spilled from my grandmother's study window. We crept around back, using the key to enter through the kitchen." "Jake?" Vivian's voice floated down the stairs. "I knew you'd come, sweetheart." Jake squeezed my hand once, then stepped into view. "It's over, Mom." "Nothing's over. Something crashed upstairs. Help me find the safe. Everything we deserve is in there." We climbed the stairs slowly. Vivian had torn the study apart, books scattered everywhere. The portrait of my grandmother lay face down on the floor. "There's nothing here for you," I said. Vivian spun around. Her perfect appearance was gone, hair wild, makeup smeared, pearls missing from her broken necklace. But her eyes were sharp as ever. "The prodigal daughter returns." She held up a familiar-looking letter. Rose left quite a paper trail. Insurance policies, property deeds, evidence of all sorts of interesting things. "Like what you did to Thomas?" Jake asked. "To Sarah?" "I protected us," Vivian snarled. "Just like Rose protected Gregory after he forged those documents. Family protects family. Is that what you told yourself when you poisoned my grandmother?" Vivian's smile turned cruel. "She should have given me what I wanted. The house, the estate, everything she promised when I helped her hide Gregory's crimes." "She never promised you anything," a voice said from the doorway. Uncle Greg stood there, pale but alive, his arm in a sling. "Rose kept evidence against me to protect the estate from you." "Liar." Vivian lunged for the safe behind the fallen portrait. "It's all in here. Proof that this house belongs to me." The safe clicked open. Inside was a single envelope and a string of pearls, identical to the ones Vivian always wore. "Those were evidence," Greg said quietly. "From Thomas's murder investigation. Rose kept them all these years, waiting for the right moment." Vivian reached for the pearls, but Jake got there first. "Dad was wearing these the night he died, wasn't he?" "Jake, please. Tell me the truth. For once." Vivian's facade cracked completely. "He was going to take you away from me. They all tried to take everything from me." She pulled another gun from her jacket, smaller than before, but just as deadly. "Now you're all going to listen carefully. This house, the estate, everything, it's mine. It's always been mine." But as she raised the gun, something caught her eye. In the envelope from the safe was a single photograph, Vivian herself, standing over Thomas's body. Her precious pearls broken and scattered around him like tears. Rose wasn't protecting Gregory, I realized. She was protecting everyone from you. The gun wavered as sirens wailed in the distance. Jake stepped forward, the photograph of his father held out like a shield. It's over, Mom, he said softly. I choose the truth. 6 months after Vivian's arrest, I stood in my grandmother's study, finally ready to pack away the last of the evidence. The trial had been quick, the photograph of Thomas's murder, combined with Greg's testimony and the exhumation of my grandmother's body showing traces of poison, left little room for doubt. Jake helped me sort through the boxes, both of us quiet with the weight of what we'd learned. Sarah had been found alive, hidden away in a mental health facility under a false name, committed there by Vivian after she discovered too much. She was recovering now, helping the police piece together other mysterious deaths connected to Vivian's past. Found something else, Jake said, holding up a sealed envelope. My name was written on it in my grandmother's handwriting, dated just days before her death. Inside was a deed to the house and a letter I'd never seen before. Dearest Mally. By now you know the truth about Vivian, about the choices we all made. I kept evidence of her crimes not for revenge, but as protection for those who would come after me. Including you. The house is yours, as is the trust fund I've set aside. But the real inheritance is the truth you've fought to uncover. Sometimes protection means making hard choices. Sometimes it means letting go of those we love to save them from themselves. I couldn't save Vivian from what she became. But I could save you from her fate. Love always. Grandma Rose. Jake touched my shoulder gently. You okay? I nodded, thinking about all the women who'd stood in this room before me, my grandmother, Sarah, even Vivian herself. Each making choices that echoed through time. I visited Mom yesterday, Jake said quietly. She asked about the pearls. The evidence pearls sat in their box on my desk, a reminder of everything that had happened. What did you tell her? That they're where they belong. With the truth. We worked in silence for a while, until Greg appeared in the doorway, his arm finally out of its sling. Found something you should see. He led us to the garden, where workers were removing the old fountain, the one Vivian had always admired. Underneath was a small cache of letters, preserved in waterproof containers. More evidence? I asked. Greg shook his head. Love letters. Between Vivian and Thomas. Before. Everything. Jake picked one up with trembling hands. She really loved him? Maybe that's why she couldn't let him go, I said. Why she can't let anyone go. The last box contained a single pearl necklace, identical to the one Vivian always wore. A note attached read, "For when you're ready to understand, Rose." She knew, Greg said softly. Rose knew Vivian would self-destruct eventually. She was trying to save her, right until the end. Jake stared at the necklace. All this time, Mom thought she was protecting me. But she was really afraid of losing control. Of being alone. I touched his hand gently. We don't have to be our parents' mistakes. Later that night, as Jake and I sat on the porch watching the sunset, I thought about protection, about love. About the fine line between saving someone and destroying them. The house felt different now, not haunted by secrets, but filled with hard-won truth. What happens now? Jake asked. I looked at the garden where the fountain had stood, thinking about planting something new there. Something that could grow without shadows. We make different choices, I said. My phone buzzed, a message from the prison. Vivian wanted to see me. Just me. Jake noticed my expression. You don't have to go. I know. I squeezed his hand. But maybe understanding is its own kind of protection. The pearl necklace sat in my drawer upstairs, waiting. Not as evidence, not as a weapon, but as a reminder that sometimes the greatest act of love is letting the truth come to light. No matter how much it hurts. Tomorrow, I would visit Vivian. Not for revenge, not for closure, but because sometimes protection means facing the darkness to find your way back to light. But tonight, in this moment, I was exactly where I needed to be, in my grandmother's house, with Jake beside me. Writing our own story one truth at a time.
I always thought karma would come dressed in something more dramatic than a plain manila envelope. But there it was, sitting innocently on my desk between a cold cup of coffee and a stack of quarterly reports, about to blow my whole world apart. My name is Mallory, Mally to the few people I actually like, and up until about 10 minutes ago, I was having a perfectly ordinary Tuesday at Morton and Associates. The kind where the biggest drama was the office printer jamming for the third time this week. Earth to Mally. Sam's voice cut through my daze. She was perched on the edge of my desk, waving her hand in front of my face. "You've been staring at that envelope like it might bite you." I blinked, realizing I hadn't moved since opening it. The photos inside were scattered across my keyboard, each one a perfect little grenade of betrayal. My sister Chloe and my fiancé Jamie, caught in various moments of intimacy over what looked like weeks, maybe months. "I think I'm going to be sick," I managed, shoving the photos back into the envelope. Sam grabbed it before I could hide the evidence in my drawer. "Holy shit," she whispered, flipping through them. Are these recent?" The date stamp on the back says last week. My voice sounded strange, hollow. "That's the necklace I got Jamie for Christmas." "The one he said he lost?" I nodded, remembering how upset he'd acted, how he'd promised to replace it. How Chloe had comforted me, saying accidents happen. The memory made my stomach turn. My phone buzzed, speaking of the devil. Jamie's face lit up my screen, probably calling about our dinner plans. I let it go to voicemail. "What are you going to do?" Sam asked, still clutching the envelope like it might explode. "Good question. What do you do when you discover your perfect little sister, the family golden child, is sleeping with your fiancé? The same sister who'd spent the last 6 months helping me plan my wedding, who'd cried when I asked her to be my maid of honor." "I should have known," I said, more to myself than Sam. "Remember last month when they both couldn't make it to Dad's birthday dinner? Said they were stuck at work." Sam's eyes widened. "The business trip to Chicago? Probably never happened." The pieces were falling into place now, a sick connect the dots of lies and betrayal. My phone buzzed again, this time with a text from Chloe. "Lunch today? Need your opinion on bridesmaid dresses. Face-blowing kiss." I almost laughed. The audacity was almost impressive. "Don't respond," Sam warned, reading over my shoulder. "Not until we figure out who sent these and what you want to do about it." The envelope had no return address, no note, nothing to indicate who might have wanted me to know the truth. Just the photos, damning in their clarity. "Mom and Dad won't believe it," I said, voicing my biggest fear. "You know how they are about Chloe. She's never done anything wrong in their eyes." Sam snorted. "Yeah, well, these photos tell a different story." My computer pinged with a calendar reminder, wedding venue appointment at 4 p.m. Jamie and Chloe were both supposed to be there, helping me make the final decision. "Cancel it," Sam said firmly. "Tell them you're sick or something. You need time to think." She was right. I needed a plan, needed to figure out how to handle this without looking like the jealous, paranoid sister Chloe always painted me as whenever I questioned her perfect facade. As I reached for my phone to cancel the appointment, another text came through. This one was from an unknown number. There's more where these came from. "Meet me at Riverside Park, 8 p.m. tonight. Come alone." I showed Sam the message, watching her eyebrows shoot up. "Well," she said after a moment, "looks like someone else has a score to settle with the golden girl." I stared at the message, feeling something shift inside me. Maybe it was time the overlooked sister finally took center stage. Riverside Park at night was exactly as sketchy as Sam warned it would be. I sat on a bench near the fountain, watching shadows stretch across the path while my phone buzzed with missed calls from Jamie and Chloe. The irony of them both trying to reach me wasn't lost on me. A figure emerged from the darkness, and I tensed until I recognized him, Luke Bennett, Chloe's ex from college. He looked different from the photos I remembered, more worn around the edges. "Didn't think you'd show," he said, dropping onto the bench beside me. "The photos. They're from you." He nodded, pulling out a cigarette. "Found out about them 2 months ago. Your sister's not as clever as she thinks she is." "Why tell me now?" Because he exhaled smoke into the cool evening air. Chloe's about to destroy someone else's life. Again. The way he said, again, made my stomach clench. What do you mean? Remember when she transferred school senior year? It wasn't because she got a better scholarship. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. She got caught sleeping with her professor's husband. The wife was pregnant. I stood up, needing to move. You're lying. Ask your parents. Oh, wait, he smirked. Let me guess, they don't know. Chloe probably fed them some story about academic opportunities, and they ate it up like everything else she serves them. Before I could respond, my phone rang again. Mom this time. Mally? Where are you? We're all at the house. Jamie said you missed the venue appointment and won't answer his calls. Chloe's worried sick. I could hear voices in the background, Dad's low rumble, Chloe's theatrical sniffling, Jamie's measured tones trying to sound concerned. I'm fine, I said, watching Luke's knowing expression. Just needed some air. Well, come home right now. We're having a family dinner, and we need to talk about this wedding venue situation. Of course. Chloe had already rallied the troops. I could picture it perfectly, her tears, my parents' concern, Jamie's confusion. The same dance we'd been doing since childhood. I'll be there soon, I lied, hanging up. Luke stood, dropping his cigarette and crushing it under his heel. They're all at your parents' place? I nodded. Perfect timing then. He pulled out his phone, showing me a video. Caught this at the Grand Hotel last week. Might want to crash that family dinner with it. The video showed Jamie and Chloe in the hotel bar, looking very much like a couple. Not just lovers sneaking around, they were comfortable, public, his arm around her waist as they laughed with other people I didn't recognize. They're not even trying to hide it anymore, Luke said quietly. Except from you. My phone buzzed with a text from Chloe, please come home. Everyone's worried. Whatever you're thinking, you're wrong. Let me explain. Why are you helping me? I asked Luke, still staring at the text. Because someone needs to stop her. And because, he hesitated, I'm not the only ex with stories to tell. Check your email later. I've collected quite a few testimonials. As he walked away, another text came through, this time from Jamie. Babe, you're being ridiculous. Come home so we can talk about this like adults. Like adults. As if I was the one being childish by not playing along with their charade. I looked at the video again, at how natural they looked together. How many other people knew? How long had I been the only one not seeing what was right in front of me? My phone rang once more, Dad this time. I let it go to voicemail, already knowing what he'd say. How I was overreacting, how I needed to be more understanding of my sister, how disappointment colored his voice whenever I didn't fall in line. But something was different now. The weight of Luke's revelations, the video evidence. The years of doubts suddenly crystallizing into certainty, it all felt like armor forming around my heart. I texted Sam, ready for phase 2? Her reply was immediate, hell yes. Want me to create a scene at dinner? I smiled, feeling a plan take shape. No, I have a better idea. How fast can you get those photos printed on canvas? Like, wedding present size. The canvas prints arrived just as I was reading through Luke's email dump. 3 hours of scrolling through messages from Chloe's past, spurned lovers, betrayed friends. And one particularly vindictive former roommate had left me feeling hollow. The pattern was always the same. Gain trust, take what she wanted, move on to the next target. Sam helped me carry the oversized prints into my parents' house. We'd waited until everyone would be there for Sunday dinner, Mom's mandatory family tradition that suddenly felt like the perfect stage for what I was about to do. You sure about this? Sam whispered as we propped the wrapped canvases against the wall. Before I could answer, Chloe's voice rang out from the kitchen. Mally? Is that you? Just in time for dinner, Mom called. And you brought Sam. Wonderful. The forced cheerfulness in her voice told me they'd been talking about me. Probably diagnosing my emotional issues again, like they did when I tried to warn them about Chloe's involvement in my last breakup. Jamie was there too, looking uncomfortable but trying to act normal. He moved to kiss me, but I stepped back, watching hurt flash across his face. Good. What are those? Dad asked, nodding at the wrapped canvases. Early wedding presents, I said, keeping my voice steady. I thought everyone might want to see them before the big day. Chloe's face went pale. She knew. Of course she knew. But she didn't expect me to do anything about it I never had before. Oh, how lovely, Mom exclaimed, already moving to unwrap them. Jamie, come help with this. I watched him approach the largest canvas, noticed how his hands shook slightly as he helped Mom remove the brown paper. The room went silent as the image was revealed, Jamie and Chloe at the Grand Hotel, his arms around her waist, both of them laughing. What is this? Dad demanded, while Mom just stood there, hand over her mouth. There's more, I said, unwrapping the second canvas, them kissing outside his office building. And the third, entering her apartment building at midnight, his hand on the small of her back. These are obviously fake, Chloe said quickly, but her voice wavered. Someone's trying to cause trouble. Mally's always been jealous. Don't. My voice cut through her excuses. I have the video, too. And the testimonials from your other victims. Like Professor Carter's wife? Or Luke. Or maybe we should talk about David from your first year of college. Jamie had backed away from the canvases, looking sick. Chloe, you said, you told me Mally knew. That she was okay with. She told you what? Mom interrupted, finally finding her voice. That Mally and I had an arrangement, Jamie said quietly. That she was seeing someone else too, and we were just waiting for the right time to end things publicly. I laughed, and the sound seemed to startle everyone. Of course she did. Just like she told Luke I was sleeping with her boyfriend in high school. Just like she told David I was the one sending those messages from her phone. You're making this all up, Chloe said, but tears were starting to fall. Perfect, calculated tears that had always worked before. Not this time, I said, pulling out my phone. Luke saved everything. All your messages, all your schemes. Did you really think none of them would ever compare notes? Dad started to say something about family loyalty, but Mom cut him off. Henry, not now. Let her finish. That was new. Mom had never stopped Dad from defending Chloe before. I don't need to finish, I said, suddenly tired of all of it. The canvases can stay here. Consider them my contribution to the family photo collection. Sam and I are going to get dinner somewhere else. Mally, wait, Jamie called as I turned to leave. We need to talk about this. No, we really don't. But you should probably talk to Chloe about Luke. Apparently, they've been meeting up too. Something about revenge being better when it's a team sport. I heard Chloe's gasp, saw Jamie's face contort with realization. But I was already walking out, Sam right beside me, leaving behind the sounds of my family's perfect Sunday dinner imploding. That was brutal, Sam said as we got in her car. Yeah, I agreed, feeling lighter than I had in years. But you know what's funny? I don't even want revenge anymore. I just want pancakes. Sam grinned, starting the engine. Pancakes it is. And hey, at least you got your deposit back on that wedding venue. 3 days after the Sunday dinner showdown, Mom showed up at my apartment unannounced. She stood in my doorway clutching her signature stress baking offering, a banana bread that smelled like childhood and complicated feelings. Your father doesn't know I'm here, she said, pushing past me into the kitchen. Her hands shook as she set down the bread. I watched her move around my space, noting how small she suddenly looked. Did Chloe send you? No. She turned, meeting my eyes for what felt like the first time in years. I've been going through old photos. Remember when you girls were little and Chloe would always cry until we let her stand in front of you in pictures? Mom. I thought it was sweet, she continued, her voice cracking. Her wanting to be seen. I never realized. She pulled out her phone, showing me a text conversation. Jamie reached out to me yesterday. He told me everything. I felt my stomach drop. Everything? About the abortion last year. How Chloe convinced him it was better not to tell you, that it would only hurt you. How she. Mom's voice failed her. The room tilted slightly. What abortion? Mom's face went pale. Oh God. You didn't know about that part either. My phone buzzed, Luke calling again. He'd been trying to reach me since Sunday, probably to gloat about our successful takedown. I let it go to voicemail. There's more, Mom said quietly. Your father's company, the new client Chloe brought in through her PR firm, it's a front. The SEC is investigating, and your father could lose everything. I sank into a kitchen chair, trying to process this new layer of betrayal. Does Dad know? Not yet. I found the investigation papers in Chloe's room when I was looking for evidence that the photos were fake. She laughed bitterly. I wanted so badly to prove you wrong. My phone buzzed again, Sam this time. 911. Turn on the news. Channel 7. I grabbed the remote, flicking on the TV. There was Jamie, standing at a podium, Chloe by his side. The caption read, "Local financial director announces engagement, claims blackmail attempt." While these accusations are painful, Chloe and I have decided to face them together, Jamie was saying. The manipulated photos and false claims are clearly an attempt to damage both our reputations and our family's businesses. Mom made a small, wounded sound. The timing of these allegations, just as Rivers Investment Group announces its merger, is suspicious, Chloe added, looking perfectly distressed. My sister's involvement with known criminal Luke Bennett raises serious questions about her stability and motives. Known criminal? I echoed. My phone exploded with notifications, work colleagues, family, friends, all sending links to articles about Luke's apparent history of fraud and blackmail. She's going to destroy you, Mom whispered. Just like she's destroying your father's company. And we let her. We taught her she could. Another text from Sam. Luke's been arrested. Something about wire fraud. This is bad, Molly. I stared at the TV, watching Jamie and Chloe play the victims while my life burned down around me. Again. But this time was different. This time, I had my mother's shaking hands and a lifetime of receipts. Mom, I said slowly, those investigation papers you found, where are they? In my car. I wasn't sure. Get them. And call Dad. Tell him to meet us at Sam's office in an hour. She's not just my best friend. She's also the best corporate lawyer in the city. You want to fight back? Mom asked, something like hope flickering in her eyes. I looked at the TV again, where Chloe was now crying perfectly timed tears about her sister's betrayal. No. I want to stop fighting altogether. It's time to end this. My phone buzzed one more time, a text from an unknown number. Smart girl, getting your mother on your side. But are you sure she's telling you everything? Ask her about the trust fund. I deleted the message without showing Mom. Some truths could wait. Right now, we had a different battle to fight, and for once, I wasn't going to be the only one standing on the front lines. The email from Human Resources arrived while I was sitting in Sam's office, watching her dissect the SEC investigation papers. Temporary leave of absence, they called it. Corporate speak for your family drama is bad for business. They can't do this, Sam said, reading over my shoulder. It's constructive dismissal. They just did. I closed my laptop, feeling oddly calm. Apparently, my recent behavior and connection to ongoing investigations make me a liability. Sam's phone buzzed, another message from her contact at the SEC. Her face darkened as she read it. Chloe's been busy. The fake company she brought to your dad's firm? It's connected to 3 other investment scams. And guess whose signature is on all the paperwork? Dad's. And yours. The calm shattered. That's impossible. I never. Remember those partnership documents you signed last Christmas? The ones Chloe said were for Dad's retirement planning. My hands started shaking. She wouldn't. She did. Sam pulled up a document on her screen. Your signature's on everything. If this goes south, you're looking at federal charges. A knock at the door made us both jump. It was Dad, looking older than I'd ever seen him. The board's suspending me, he said without preamble. Pending investigation. His eyes met mine. Did you know? About any of this? Before I could answer, my phone lit up with a text from Chloe. Coffee? We need to talk. Just sisters. Please? Don't, Sam warned, seeing my expression. It's a trap. Of course it is. I stood up, grabbing my coat. But I'm done playing defense. Dad caught my arm. Mally, wait. There's something else. Your mother. She knew about some of this. The trust fund, the fake companies. She was trying to protect Chloe, but not me. The laugh that escaped sounded foreign, even to my ears. Shocking. Sam tried to stop me again, but I was already moving. 20 minutes later, I walked into the coffee shop where everything had started, where Jamie had proposed, where Chloe had helped plan my wedding, where all the lies had been crafted over perfectly foamed lattes. Chloe was already there, looking flawless as always. 2 cups sat on the table. "I got your favorite," she said, pushing one toward me. I stayed standing. "Why? Because you like caramel macchiatos? Why did you forge my signature? Why set up Dad to take the fall? Why any of this?" Her perfect facade cracked, just slightly. "You weren't supposed to find out about that part yet. Not until after the merger, when everything would be too complicated to unravel. And Jamie? The baby? A mistake. Several mistakes, actually." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "But it worked out, didn't it? He's much better suited for me. We understand each other. Like you and Luke understood each other?" That hit home. Her smile faltered. "Luke was a complication, but he's been handled. He's in jail, Chloe. Because of you. Because of us," she corrected. "Your signature's on those documents too, remember? And now that you've lost your job, been connected to a federal investigation." She shrugged delicately. "Who's going to believe you over me?" My phone buzzed, Sam sending a warning, probably. Or Mom with more guilt-ridden confessions. Or Dad with more revelations about family betrayals. "You know what's funny?" I said, finally sitting down. "I actually felt guilty about those canvas prints. About exposing you at dinner. I thought maybe I'd gone too far." "You did." Chloe's voice hardened. "And now you're going to help me fix this. Sign these." She pulled out a folder, and everything goes away. "The investigation focuses on Luke, Dad's company survives, and you. You get to walk away clean." I opened the folder, read the first page. Confession. Conspiracy. My name in bold letters, ready to take the blame. "And if I don't?" Her smile returned, razor sharp. "Then I guess we'll see who Mom and Dad believe." Again, I reached for my coffee, letting my hand brush against my phone, where Sam's last text glowed. Got it all on record. Signal when ready. The game wasn't over yet. Not by a long shot. The police station smelled like stale coffee and broken promises. I sat in the interview room, staring at my reflection in the two-way mirror while Detective Martinez read the charges again. Financial fraud. Conspiracy. Wire fraud. And now potential involvement in Lucas Bennett's disappearance. She paused, letting that sink in. "That's a lot of trouble for someone with no prior record, Miss Rivers." Luke was missing. Had been for 12 hours since right after my coffee with Chloe. The timing wasn't subtle. "My client won't be answering any questions," Sam said, her lawyer voice sharp enough to cut glass. But I could see the worry in her eyes. My phone sat on the table, screen dark. No calls from Mom or Dad since they'd posted bail. No messages from Jamie, who was probably too busy doing damage control with Chloe at his side. Just one text from an unknown number. "Sorry, Molly. She made me do it." The door opened and Chloe walked in like she owned the place. Designer suit, perfect makeup, concerned sister face firmly in place. "Officer, I need to speak with my sister." Her voice wavered just enough to seem genuine. "Please, this is all a horrible misunderstanding." "Don't," Sam warned, but Detective Martinez was already standing. 5 minutes, she said, leaving us alone. Chloe waited until the door clicked shut. "You should have signed the papers." "Where's Luke?" "Probably halfway to Mexico by now, with enough evidence to bury you and Dad." She sat down, smoothing her skirt. "But it doesn't have to stick. Just confess to orchestrating the fraud scheme, say Luke helped you, and this all goes away. And you get everything." Again. "I already have everything, Molly. Jamie, the company, Mom and Dad's trust. What exactly are you fighting for?" The truth hit like a physical blow. She was right. I'd lost my job, my fiancé, my family's faith. Even my freedom was hanging by a thread. "Did you ever love me?" The question slipped out before I could stop it. "Even when we were kids?" Something flickered across her face, pain, maybe, or just a better performance. You were always so good. So perfect. Dad's reliable daughter. Mom's sensible one. Even when they favored me, they respected you. That's not an answer. No, it's not. She stood up, straightening her jacket. The DA is offering a deal. 5 years, maybe less with good behavior. Think about it. As she reached for the door, I said, the trust fund papers. She paused. What about them? Mom's signature. It wasn't just forged, was it? She actually signed them, knowing what you were doing. Chloe's smile was almost gentle. Now you're asking the right questions. Shame it's too late. The door opened again, Detective Martinez returning with a new file. Miss Rivers, we've found some additional documents we'd like to discuss. Sam leaned forward, but I barely heard her legal objections. My phone had lit up with a message from Mom. I'm so sorry, sweetheart. I thought I was protecting both of you. Another text followed immediately. Check the old beach house. 3rd floorboard from the window in your room. I kept everything. I looked up through the two-way mirror, knowing Chloe was watching from the other side. For the first time since this started, I saw the whole board clearly, every move, every manipulation, every carefully placed piece. Detective, I said, cutting off Sam's legal arguments, I'd like to make a statement. Mally, don't, Sam started, but I squeezed her hand. Not about the charges. I met Detective Martinez's eyes. About what really happened the night Luke Bennett disappeared, and about a series of documents hidden at my family's beach house that might interest the SEC. My phone buzzed one final time. Chloe, you wouldn't dare. I smiled at the mirror, knowing she could see me. Some games you win by flipping the board. Detective, I said, let me tell you about my perfect little sister. The beach house looked exactly the same, weathered gray shingles, creaking porch steps, and 25 years of secrets hidden beneath its floorboards. I found what Mom had stashed away in less than 10 minutes. The evidence that would save Dad's company and my freedom, but destroy what was left of our family. Detective Martinez was waiting in the kitchen when I came down, files in hand. Your sister's here, she said quietly, with your parents and Mr. Hughes. Of course they were. The final act needed its full cast. I walked into the living room, where time seemed to have frozen. Mom perched on the edge of the sofa, Dad standing behind her like a guard. Jamie lurked by the window, while Chloe stood in the center of the room, perfectly positioned as always. Found what you were looking for? Chloe asked, her voice steady despite her pale face. I dropped the files on the coffee table. Everything. The original trust documents. Dad's forged signatures. The fake company paperwork. Even your old phone with all those threatening texts to Luke. Luke's fine, by the way, Detective Martinez added from the doorway. We found him at a motel outside of town. He's been quite cooperative. You set me up, Chloe said, realization dawning. The coffee shop. The confession. You knew Mom would tell me about the beach house. I learned from the best. The words tasted bitter. You taught me how to play the long game, remember? All those years watching you manipulate everyone around you. Mally, Dad started, but Mom touched his arm, stopping him. Let them finish, she whispered. Jamie pushed away from the window. I should go. Stay. My voice cracked like a whip. You helped create this mess. You get to watch it burn. It wasn't supposed to go this far, Chloe said, her perfect facade finally cracking. The company deal, the fraud, that was Luke's idea. I just wanted. What? Everything I had? Again. I wanted to matter. She was crying now, real tears this time. You were always the responsible one, the successful one. Even when they favored me, you were the one they respected. I just wanted to prove I could be better. By destroying everything I cared about? By being seen. Her voice rose, decades of insecurity spilling out. Do you know what it's like living in your shadow? Perfect Mally, who never makes mistakes, never needs help, never. Stop. Mom stood up suddenly. Just stop. This isn't about your sister's shadow, Chloe. This is about what you did. What we let you do. The room went silent. Mom never interrupted Chloe's performances. The documents, Detective Martinez said into the quiet. They're enough for charges? I nodded, Not taking my eyes off Chloe. Everything the SEC needs. Plus evidence of Luke's involvement and Jamie's knowledge of the fraud. Jamie started to protest, but Chloe's laugh cut him off. Oh, that's good. Really good. Using my own tactics against me. She wiped her eyes, smearing perfect makeup. So what now? You send me to jail? Destroy the family to save it? No. I picked up the files again. You have a choice. Come clean about everything, the fraud, Luke, all of it. Take the plea deal they're offering. Get help. Or I submit these and we all go down together. You wouldn't. Try me. I met her eyes, seeing for the first time the scared little girl behind the manipulator. I learned more than just game playing from you, Chloe. I learned how far someone will go when they're backed into a corner. The silence stretched, heavy with 28 years of rivalry, love, and betrayal. Finally, Chloe reached for the confession papers Detective Martinez held out. Her hands shook as she signed. I really did love you, she whispered. That's why it had to be you. Nobody else ever felt real enough to destroy. As they led her out, Mom touched my arm. The trust fund papers are staying hidden, I finished. Some secrets should stay buried. Dad cleared his throat. Mally, I don't. I turned away from all of them. We're not doing that part yet. Maybe not ever. Through the window, I watched them load Chloe into the police car. She looked back once, and for a moment, I saw us as we used to be, just sisters, before shadows and secrets tore us apart. Sam was right. Sometimes winning feels exactly like losing. 6 months later, I stood outside the minimum security prison, waiting for Chloe. Sam sat in her car nearby, ready to intervene if needed, but this moment belonged to just us sisters. When Chloe emerged, she looked smaller somehow. Less polished. More real. You came, she said, stopping a few feet away. You asked. The letter had arrived last week, her first direct communication since the sentencing. No manipulation, no blame, just 3 words. Please be there. Dad's company survived, I said into the awkward silence. The SEC accepted the plea deals. Luke's serving his time in California. And Jamie moved to Boston. Apparently, burning bridges is his specialty. She almost smiled at that. Almost. Mom wants to do family therapy, I continued. Dad's actually considering it. But you're not sure. It wasn't a question. I shrugged, watching a guard change shifts in the distance. I'm learning to live without certainty. It's surprisingly peaceful. Chloe shifted her small bag of belongings from one hand to the other. I have something for you. They let me keep it. She pulled out a creased photograph, us as kids, gap-toothed and grinning, my arm around her shoulders. Halloween, I remembered. You wanted to be the princess, but you gave me the crown because I was sick. The only time I ever put you first. Her voice cracked. I found it in an old magazine in the prison library. Someone did a story on Dad's company years ago. We were in the background. I took the photo, feeling its worn edges. Why did you keep it? To remind myself that we weren't always this. She gestured vaguely between us. That maybe we don't have to be. A car horn honked Mom and Dad pulling up. They'd insisted on being here, though they'd agreed to wait until I had this moment with Chloe. They're taking me to the halfway house, Chloe said. Part of the deal. I nodded, still looking at the photo. I have something for you too. I pulled out an envelope. Your trust fund papers. The originals. Her hands shook as she took them. You kept them? Some secrets deserve a second chance, even if the people who made them don't get one yet. She understood what I wasn't saying. Forgiveness wasn't on the table, but maybe something else was, something slower, more cautious, built on truth instead of competition. I have to go, she said, glancing at our parents' car. But Mally? That thing I said, about destroying you because you felt real? I was wrong. I did it because you were the only one who ever saw through me, and I couldn't stand being seen. I watched her walk away, saw Mom's tentative hug, Dad's awkward pat on her shoulder. Through the car window, I caught Mom's questioning look, an invitation to join them. Not today, I mouthed, and she nodded, understanding for once. Sam appeared at my side. You okay? Ask me tomorrow. I handed her the photo. Did I ever tell you about the princess costume? Only about 100 times. She bumped my shoulder. Come on, I'm buying you coffee. You can tell me again. As we walked away, my phone buzzed with a text from Chloe. The crown never suited me anyway. I smiled, thinking of that Halloween, of crowns passed between sisters, of the fine line between seeing and being seen. Some stories don't end with forgiveness or revenge. Some just end with understanding, and maybe that's enough. Hey, Sam, I said as we reached her car. Make it pancakes instead of coffee. She grinned, getting the reference to that night 6 months ago. Pancakes it is. The perfect food for new beginnings. I finished, taking one last look at the photo before tucking it away. Not everything broken needs to be fixed. Sometimes it just needs to be acknowledged, like an old crown passed between sisters on a long ago Halloween. Its plastic gems catching the light just right.